I need to say up front, I'm not someone who assumes the worst about people just because they're being helpful. But when the police sat me down in that fluorescent lit interview room and asked me specifically about my device access logs, I felt my entire body go cold because I instantly knew which timestamps they meant. I work as a junior tech analyst at a software firm in a building that feels like it was designed by someone who hates natural light. The server room, where I spend most of my late shifts, is all flickering screens and buzzing fluorescents that give everything this sickly blue-gray tint. It's the kind of place where 11 p.m. feels like 3 a.m., and you lose track of whether you've been staring at code for 2 hours or 6. The first time Lucian J. Ricker offered to help, I didn't think anything of it. It was a Tuesday, past midnight, and I was alone debugging a migration script that refused to compile. I was doing that thing where you've read the same error message so many times the words stop meaning anything, just frustration made visible. Then I heard footsteps behind me in the dim room, and he appeared from the shadows near the server racks. I actually jumped. He smiled, apologetic, hands up like he was approaching a spooked animal. "Didn't mean to scare you," he said. "Struggling? I know shortcuts. Been here 12 years. I should have noticed how he said it, not, "I might be able to help," or "want another pair of eyes," just, "I know shortcuts," like he'd already decided he was taking over. But I was exhausted and grateful, and he was senior staff, so I shifted my chair over and let him lean in. His hand covered mine on the keyboard. "Let me handle that." The touch lasted too long. His eyes in the monitor's glow had this intensity that felt wrong for helping someone debug code, like he was pleased about something I couldn't see. But he fixed the issue in maybe 3 minutes, and I was so relieved I convinced myself I'd imagined the weirdness. "You should let me mentor you properly," he said as he was leaving. "Regular sessions. I can accelerate your career here." I said yes, because that's what you do when a 12-year veteran offers to mentor you. You say thank you and you feel lucky. That was my first mistake. The sessions started weekly, always late, always in dim spaces when the office was mostly empty. He'd appeared during my late shifts like he'd been timing me, code already off, ready to dive into whatever I was working on. And the help was real, I'll give him that. He knew systems inside and out, could troubleshoot in half the time it took me. But the questions started almost immediately. "How's the Jenkins migration going?" he asked one night. I stared at him. "I haven't mentioned that project to anyone." He smiled. "I saw it on the shared drive." Except it wasn't on the shared drive. I was working from local files, hadn't pushed anything yet. I told myself maybe he'd seen an email, maybe someone mentioned it, but my stomach did this little flip that I ignored. Then the emails started. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., messages from Lucian with helpful resources for problems I hadn't told him I was having. Subject lines like, "for the authentication issue," when I'd just encountered that authentication issue an hour before and hadn't documented it anywhere. One night, I got an email that made my skin prickle. "Hope your home Wi-Fi got fixed. That packet loss would drive me insane." I'd never mentioned my Wi-Fi to him. I'd complained about it to my roommate on the phone in my apartment, just once. How did he know? I started changing my passwords. Just as a precaution, I told myself. Nothing dramatic, just good security hygiene. I made them complicated, used a password manager, the works. The next mentoring session, Lucian smiled at me across the desk and said, "New password? Smart security practice." My blood went cold. "How did you know I changed my password?" "Oh, I just assume everyone should be rotating regularly." But his eyes had this amused glint, like we were sharing a private joke I wasn't in on. More things started happening. He'd reference articles I'd bookmarked privately, mention my evening locations. How was that Thai place on 5th Street? When I'd gone alone and told no one. He knew when I was working from home before I'd updated my calendar. It felt like he was always one shadow ahead of me, seeing around corners I hadn't turned yet. I tested him, told him I was planning a weekend trip to Seattle, made a whole story of it. I didn't go. I stayed local, didn't post anything online. Monday morning, he asked, "How was Seattle?" with this knowing smile. I couldn't breathe properly. "I didn't go to Seattle." "Oh? Could have sworn you mentioned it." But his face said he knew I was lying, knew I'd stayed, knew exactly where I'd been instead. During one lunch break, I managed to catch Shelby alone in the break room. She was another junior analyst, had started around the same time as me. I'd noticed Lucian had mentored her too. "Was Lucian helpful when you started?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Her face did something complicated. "He's thorough." "Thorough?" She looked around, like checking if anyone could hear. "Just be careful what you share with him. I can't really—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "Never mind, I shouldn't have said anything." A week later, Shelby stopped coming to work. I asked HR about her. They gave me this smooth corporate response. "Shelby found opportunities elsewhere. We wish her well." I tried calling her. Number disconnected. LinkedIn gone. Instagram deleted. It was like she'd evaporated. I started declining mentoring sessions, making excuses about being busy or working from home. Lucian's responses were always understanding, always supportive, but there was something underneath, an edge. Then one night I declined a session and he appeared at my desk anyway. I hadn't heard him coming. "I thought you were busy," he said. "I am, Don't you want to advance here?" His smile had dropped for a split second, and I saw something cold underneath. Anger. Possession. Then the mentor mask snapped back into place. "I'm just trying to help you succeed." After he left, I sat there shaking, staring at my screen. My laptop had been acting weird for weeks. Files I didn't remember opening, browser history showing sites I'd never visited, background processes I couldn't identify. On a hunch, or maybe paranoia, I couldn't tell anymore, I dug into my device security logs. Most people don't even know those exist, but I'm in tech. I know where to look. The logs showed unauthorized login attempts, dozens of them, many successful. The timestamps matched perfectly with our mentoring sessions, and before those sessions started, going back months, remote access attempts from an IP address that traced to the office building. Someone had been in my system long before I'd given them any legitimate access. Someone had installed remote access software, a keylogger, tracking applications. Someone had been reading every email, watching every search, recording every password. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely scroll through the evidence. Every password change I'd made, he'd watched me type the new ones. Every login to my bank, my personal email, my medical records, he'd had access. Months of complete digital surveillance, and I'd been working in the dark, literally and figuratively, while he watched from the shadows. I found him in his usual spot near the server racks. The dim light made his face hard to read. "I found the logs," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "You've been in my devices, my personal accounts." He didn't deny it, didn't even look surprised, just stayed eerily calm, that same mentor smile. "I was looking out for you," he said simply, "making sure you weren't making mistakes that could hurt your career. You gave me access, remember? First session. I was being a good mentor. You've been in my banking apps, my personal email. That's not mentoring, that's careful oversight." He took a step closer in the dim room. "I know everything about you now. Every password, every account, every secret you think is private. And you know what? You needed someone watching. You were sloppy, careless." The casualness was worse than if he'd yelled. He genuinely believed he had the right. "I'm calling security." His expression shifted. Not angry, disappointed, like I was a student who had failed a test. "You'll regret making this difficult," he said quietly. "I know everything about you. Everything." My finger was already on my phone, already dialing. What I didn't know then, what the police would tell me later in that fluorescent interview room, was that I was the fourth. Shelby had been the third. There had been two others before her, both pressured into signing NDAs to avoid a legal battle with the company. And what I definitely didn't know, sitting there in the dark, with Lucian's face half lit by server lights and his voice promising he knew everything about me, was that the police had been building a case for weeks, because Shelby hadn't just disappeared, she'd run. Story 2. I'm not someone who believes in office politics, or at least I wasn't. I thought if you kept your head down and did excellent work, that would be enough. That merit mattered more than who you had lunch with or what you said in the break room. I learned how wrong I was in the worst possible way, and by the time I figured it out, my entire reputation had already been dismantled in whispers I couldn't hear. I work as a coordinator at a corporate headquarters that's all shadowy cubicles and dim hallways, the kind of place where the fluorescent lights are always half dead, buzzing like insects, and you can never quite tell if someone's in the cubicle next to you until they stand up. It's a maze of fabric walls and low lighting, and sound travels in strange ways. You hear fragments of conversations without seeing who's speaking. Whispers carry farther than voices. The first time I met Patsy L. Houston, she seemed like exactly the kind of team lead I wanted to work for. Charismatic, connected, the type who knew everyone's name and somehow made you feel seen. She'd been at the company for 8 years, climbed from coordinator to team lead, and people spoke about her with this mixture of respect and slight nervousness that I mistook for admiration. I was finishing the Morrison report after hours, alone in the dim break room because my cubicle felt too cramped. It was a big project, high visibility, and I'd spent 3 weeks making it perfect. Every data point verified, every recommendation backed by solid analysis. I was exhausted, but proud. Patsy appeared in the doorway, her smile warm in the flickering light. "Still here? You're so dedicated," she said, walking over. "What are you working on?" I showed her the Morrison report. She leaned over my shoulder, reading, nodding. "This is really great work," she said. "Morrison will love the detail. The depth of analysis here is exactly what we need." I felt this swell of validation. The team lead noticed. The team lead approved. This is how you get ahead. "We should grab coffee sometime. I like people who put in the effort. You're going places." She left, and I packed up feeling like I was finally being recognized, like my hard work was paying off. 5 minutes later, I was walking past the shadowed hallway near the copy room when I heard Patsy's voice, lower register, different tone. I stopped. "The Morrison report," she was saying. "I'm worried about the quality, honestly." Another voice, someone I couldn't identify. "Really? I thought it was supposed to be comprehensive." "Lots of basic errors," Patsy said. "I'll probably need to fix it before it goes up to Morrison. I don't want it reflecting badly on the team." I stood there frozen in the dim hallway, my bag heavy on my shoulder, trying to process what I'd just heard. The same report she'd praised 5 minutes ago, the same work she called great. I told myself I'd misheard. She must be talking about a different project. She just complimented my work to my face. This was about something else. But the doubt had planted itself like a seed in dark soil. The next day, I noticed something off. Colleagues who usually chatted with me in the shadowy cubicle rows were cooler. Not hostile, just distant. When I approached the break room, a conversation stopped mid-sentence. People smiled, made excuses, dispersed. I submitted the Morrison report. His response was brief. "Received, thanks." Usually he was more effusive, would highlight specific sections he appreciated. This felt like a door closing. A week later, there was a strategy meeting I normally attended. I only found out it had happened when I saw the calendar update afterward. I asked my colleague James about it. "Oh," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "We thought you were too busy with the Henderson project." "I'm not on the Henderson project," I said. He shrugged uncomfortably and walked away. Patsy continued being warm to my face. She'd stop by my cubicle in the dim, late afternoon light, perch on the edge of my desk. "How are you holding up?" she'd ask, concerned. "You seem stressed lately." "I'm fine." "Well, I'm here if you need to talk. This job can be overwhelming, and I know it's a lot of pressure." Then the private messages started. Slack DMs that made my stomach clench. "Hey, just wanted to check in. I've been hearing some things, and I want you to succeed, but people are noticing some mistakes. Nothing major, but I thought you should know." I asked for specifics. She never provided them. "Just general feedback. I don't want to get into office gossip, but be aware there are concerns about reliability." I went through every project I'd completed in the last 6 months, line by line, data point by data point. I couldn't find the errors she was referencing. My work was solid. I knew it was solid. Then the 360 feedback came. Anonymous, aggregated, devastating. Unreliable, needs more oversight, makes careless errors, struggles with complex analysis. I stared at the words on my screen in my dim cubicle, fluorescent light buzzing overhead, and felt reality tilting. These weren't descriptions of my work. They couldn't be. But they were in writing now, in my file, official. I cross-referenced the phrasing. It matched exactly what Patsy had said in her private messages. The same words, the same concerns. It wasn't multiple independent sources. It was an echo chamber, and Patsy was the original voice. I started noticing the pattern. Every time Patsy expressed a worry about me, within days someone else would repeat it. Not word for word, but close enough, like people had been primed to see problems that weren't there. The meeting exclusions continued. Projects I'd been tracking were reassigned without explanation. When I asked why, I got vague responses about redistributing workload and managing capacity. Then HR called me in. The office was dim, the kind of lighting designed to make uncomfortable conversations feel even worse. 2 HR representatives sat across from me with serious faces. "We've received reports about performance concerns," the senior one said. "Multiple sources." My heart was hammering. "What specifically?" "We can't disclose specifics, but there's a pattern of feedback suggesting you may be struggling with the complexity of your role." "From who?" "It's anonymous feedback. We're documenting this conversation. Consider it a verbal warning." "A warning for what? You won't tell me what I've done wrong." "We're telling you there are concerns. We expect to see improvement." I left that office shaking, the fluorescent lights in the hallway seeming to pulse with my heartbeat. This was on my permanent record now, a verbal warning for violations I couldn't identify, from sources I couldn't confront, based on work I knew was good. Too late to trace it back easily. The whisper network had done its job. When I passed Patsy in the hallway, her face was all sympathy. "How did it go?" she asked softly, like she cared. I started keeping my phone on me constantly, recording meetings, saving every email, documenting every interaction. I knew I sounded paranoid, felt paranoid, but something was deeply wrong and I needed proof. I engineered a situation, left my phone recording in the break room, tucked behind the coffee maker, then pretended I'd forgotten it. Walked away just as Patsy and Karen from accounting were getting coffee. I circled back 5 minutes later, staying in the shadowed hallway just outside, and heard Patsy's voice carrying through the dim space. "The thing about competition," she was saying, "is you have to trim it early. I learned that with Venus. She was getting too ambitious, too." Karen's voice, uncertain. "You did this before?" Patsy laughed. Not a friendly laugh, a satisfied one. "Works every time. Plant doubt, let it spread organically, watch them crack under the weight. Or they leave. Either way, problem solved. I didn't get to team lead by letting juniors outshine me." My hands were shaking when I retrieved my phone. The recording was clear, her voice unmistakable, the admission explicit. I submitted it to HR with a formal complaint. Suddenly, they were very serious. Legal team got involved. The investigation they'd been too busy for when it was my reputation became urgent when there was evidence of deliberate sabotage. They found Venus's exit interview from 3 years ago. Hostile work environment created by team lead. The company had paid her a settlement with an NDA. Before Venus, 2 others. Same pattern, same outcome. Patsy had done this before, multiple times, and the company had quietly paid people off rather than deal with her. When they called Patsy in, she tried denial first. That recording was taken without my consent. I was joking with Karen, just venting. She's my friend. But combined with the history, the pattern was undeniable. They transferred her to a different division, didn't fire her, avoiding another lawsuit, another payout. She'd destroyed multiple careers and got a lateral move. I was promoted to fill her position. It should have felt like victory. Instead, I sat in our old office, now mine, and felt contaminated. Some of my colleagues never learned the truth. They still believed Patsy's version. I'd hear whispers. I heard Patsy was pushed out by someone who couldn't handle feedback. Karen, whose conversation I'd recorded, wouldn't look at me now. Angry, I recorded her without permission, didn't care that it exposed a predator. I reached out to Venus through LinkedIn. She responded within an hour. "I'm glad you got her on record. I didn't have proof. It destroyed me. I left my entire career path. Couldn't trust corporate environments anymore. Couldn't trust myself anymore, you know? When everyone's telling you you're failing, even when you know you're not, you start to believe it." I'm sitting in my new office now, lights brighter than Patsy kept them, but I still hear whispers in the hallways, and my chest tightens. 2 junior coordinators just leaned together at the coffee station, voices low, and I couldn't hear what they said. Could be nothing, probably is nothing, but I've learned that whispers and shadows can destroy you long before you even know they're being spoken. And what I didn't know then, what I wouldn't find out until I saw the email sent from Patsy's company account 3 days after her transfer, was that she'd kept copies of everything. Every email I'd ever sent, every project file, every document. And the subject line said, "We're not done." Story 3. I've never been someone who makes drama out of nothing. I'm the opposite, actually. The kind of person who convinces themselves everything's fine because the alternative is uncomfortable confrontation. Looking back, that might be exactly why I was chosen, because I'd rationalize away the warning signs until it was far too late. I work as a warehouse administrator, handling night inventory in an office that's tucked into the back corner of a massive distribution center. The lighting has always been terrible, one of those cost-cutting measures where they install the bare minimum fixtures and half of them don't work. My desk sits under a fluorescent tube that flickers constantly, casting everything in this unreliable dimness where shadows seem deeper than they should be. It's isolated back there. During night shifts, the main warehouse operates with minimal staff, and my office area is basically empty. Just me and the hum of failing lights and the occasional clang of forklifts in the distance. I'd gotten used to the solitude, actually preferred it. No office politics, no small talk, just inventory reports and the quiet. Then the light above my desk started flickering worse than usual. Not just the normal buzz and flicker, but this aggressive strobing that made my eyes hurt. I'd been dealing with it for 2 days, telling myself I'd report it eventually, when Jeffrey Pinson appeared in my doorway with a ladder. I had seen him around before. Maintenance guy, quiet, kept to himself, the kind of person you barely notice because they're just part of the building's infrastructure. "Heard you've got a light issue?" he said. "I'll fix it for you." I hadn't reported it yet. "Oh, it's not urgent. No problem. I'm here anyway." He was already setting up the ladder, not really giving me a choice. The repair took too long, way too long for a simple bulb change. 20 minutes of him up on that ladder while I tried to focus on my work, hyper-aware of his presence in my small office, and his eyes kept drifting down from the fixture to my desk, to me, lingering in a way that made my skin prickle. "You work late a lot, huh? Alone?" "Sometimes. Inventory doesn't care about daylight." "Pretty isolated back here." He climbed down, tools clanking. "Just making sure you're safe. It's a big building, lots of dark corners." The phrasing felt wrong. Not, "it's good there's security," or "be careful." Just this focus on me being alone in dark corners, said with this expression I couldn't quite read in the dim light. "I'll check on you later," he said at the door. "Make sure that light stays fixed."
You don't have to. I want to. His smile didn't reach his eyes. After he left, I sat there staring at my screen, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. He was just doing his job, I told myself. He works here. Maintenance people check on their repairs. This is normal. But it didn't feel normal. A week later, I was in a shadowy corner of the warehouse pulling supply requisitions when Jeffrey appeared from behind a shelving unit. I actually jumped, hand to my chest. "Need help carrying those?" he asked. "No, I'm good." I kept my voice light, friendly, not making drama. "You sure? They look heavy." They were file boxes, not heavy at all. "Really, I'm fine." He stood there for a beat too long, watching me, before nodding and walking away. I told myself it was nothing. Coincidence. The warehouse is big, but there are only so many routes through it. Then it kept happening. Break room when I thought I was alone, Jeffrey at the vending machine. Late snack, me too. Parking lot as I was leaving, Jeffrey smoking by the maintenance shed. Heading out, drive safe. Supply closet, hallway, near the loading dock, always appearing from dim spaces when I was alone, always with this casual greeting like our paths just happened to cross. None of it was inappropriate on the surface, but the pattern made my stomach clench. Worse, I started noticing things on my desk were moved, small things. My coffee mug that I always kept on the left side of my keyboard would be on the right. Stacks of folders I'd organized would be in a different order. My chair height adjusted. I told myself it was the cleaning crew, except cleaning happened during day shifts, and these changes appeared during my shift, while I was out walking the warehouse floor, while my office was supposedly empty. Then Jeffrey said something that made my blood go cold. "You're here late on Thursdays, right? And you usually leave around 9:30 on Mondays." I stared at him. "How do you know my schedule?" "Oh, just notice when I'm doing rounds. Occupancy patterns, you know? Part of the job."
Except I'd never told anyone my schedule. It wasn't posted. And the way he said it, so specific, so certain, felt like he'd been tracking me. I tested it. Left early on a Wednesday, a day I normally stayed late. Didn't tell anyone, just packed up at 6 p.m. and left. Next shift, Jeffrey appeared in my office doorway. "You left early yesterday. Everything okay?" My mouth went dry. "How did you know I left early?" "Saw your car was gone when I did evening rounds." That smile again. "Just noticed, that's all." I started varying my routine deliberately. Different break times, different paths through the warehouse, random schedule changes. It didn't matter. Jeffrey always seemed to know, always appeared at the right time, the right place. The shadows in the warehouse started feeling occupied, like someone had just stepped back into them, just out of sight, watching. Maria from day shift mentioned it in passing one afternoon as we were switching over. "Jeffrey seems to be around your area a lot." She said it like a joke, but her eyes were serious. "He fixes things. It's his job," I said, defending him reflexively, not making drama. "Yeah, but—" She hesitated. "Just maybe don't work alone so late. Or if you do, keep your door locked." "Why?" She looked uncomfortable. "He has habits. That's all I'll say." She left before I could press her, and I stood there in my dim office feeling cold. I started locking my door during breaks, but the unease kept growing. One day, I came back from a bathroom break to find Jeffrey coming out of my office, my locked office. "Oh," he looked startled, caught. "The light was making noise again. I wanted to check it." The light was fine. I'd just been sitting under it for 3 hours. After he left, I noticed my desktop items had been moved. Papers I'd left in a neat stack were disturbed, slightly fanned out like someone had been looking through them. A file folder that had been closed was now open. My hands were shaking as I looked around the office. What was he doing in here? Why did he have a key? That's when I noticed the air vent above my desk looked wrong. The grill was slightly crooked, like it had been removed and replaced, but not quite aligned properly. I dragged my chair over, stood on it, heart hammering. The grill just twisted off. Should have been screwed in, but wasn't. Inside the vent, nestled among the ductwork, was a small camera, SD card, battery pack,
lens pointed directly at my desk. I almost fell off the chair. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the camera down. Took it to a friend who works in IT, hands shaking as I explained. The footage review made me want to vomit. I couldn't watch most of it. Months of recording. Me at my desk, on the phone, eating lunch, stretching, rubbing my neck when it got sore. Hours and hours of passive observation. Timestamps showed recording continuing even when I was gone. Jeffrey must have been reviewing the footage, seeing when I left, when I arrived. The metadata showed he'd accessed the files dozens of times, watching me, studying me. One clip showed Jeffrey installing the camera, his face clearly visible. No mistake about who was responsible. "This is criminal," my friend said, pale. "You need to call the police right now." The police came to the warehouse. Jeffrey was arrested on site, escorted out in handcuffs while I watched from the HR office, shaking. They searched the maintenance areas. His locker contained notebooks, pages and pages of notes about me, my schedule, what I wore, what I ate, my moods as he'd observed them. Detailed documentation like I was a specimen he was studying. And it wasn't just me. They found 2 more cameras in other parts of the building, 2 other employees being watched, both women, both working isolated night shifts. Jeffrey's notebooks had notes on all of us. The detective sat across from me in an interview room with better lighting than I'd had in months. "This is escalating behavior," she said. "The documentation, the cameras, the access. In cases like this, observation usually isn't the end goal." "What do you mean?"
He was building up to something. You finding that camera likely prevented direct contact. I couldn't go back. Couldn't walk into that office knowing what had been happening there. Couldn't sit at that desk where I'd been watched for months without knowing. Every private moment I'd thought was private, stretching, yawning, adjusting my clothes, had been observed, recorded, studied. I quit the next day. The company installed better lighting and security cameras. Too late for me. Too late for the other 2 women who'd also quit rather than return to spaces that had been violated. Jeffrey was charged with stalking, voyeurism, criminal invasion of privacy, but the legal process meant I'd have to testify, would have to sit in a courtroom while the footage was described in detail, while my private moments became evidence. I got a new job. Well-lit office, glass walls, open floor plan, everything visible, nothing hidden. But I still check the vents, stand on my chair at least once a week, twist off the grill, peer inside even though I know it's empty. When the HVAC kicks on, my eyes snap to the ceiling. My therapist says it's hypervigilance, normal after a violation of privacy. It'll fade with time. But I don't think it will. Because what I didn't tell her, what I haven't told anyone, is that I got a message 3 days ago from an unknown number. Just a photo, taken from an angle I recognized immediately, high up, looking down. It was me at my new desk in my new building, and the metadata showed it was taken yesterday.